Now, I think the first thing worth doing is to draw this circuit as a proper circuit diagram. It'll be the same as this particular circuit. So let's draw. We've got a PIC 12F1501. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, making a total of 8 pins. This pin here goes to plus 5 volts. This pin here goes to the 0 volts. And we only use that other pin. So there it is, but maybe I can put it down here so that it doesn't cross the line. So let's take this, it goes to a resistor, which is 180 ohms, and then it goes to an LED infrared. So let's just see. Current flows from positive to negative. So there's your infrared LED, and then this goes back to 0 volts. So there is the circuit that we've got to. Now we can take this apart and we know where everything's got to go. Oh yes. Where does the switch fit in? The switch switches on. So the switch seems to go from the 5 volts. Here's the switch to there, and it switches on. So the switch is in the 5 volt line. So here is your switch. I think the hardest component to mount is going to be this little bell or push switch. It's got 4 little legs. And you know what? I'm just going to bend them over. They're not very strong legs. I'm just going to try and bend them over and then try and solder them and hope that they stay in. Well, at least the plastic, the Vero board plastic, doesn't melt. Seems to have soldered that lead on. Let's get another little one. That's about the best I think I can do. I think those two have now soldered the switch in. So what I'm going to do is pull this chip out. It's quite hard working with a tripod. So we're now going to do this. Reverse it over, put it in. And I'm just taking that whole jacket off. I'm going to put this through here like that and connect it to the 5. So let's just add a bit of flux. Now, soldering pins of I would say that you would try to be as quick as possible soldering the pin on a pick, because any heat is going to, if you have too much heat, it's going to destroy the chip. Now to the 0 volts, we've got to have the LED, to the other side of this chip, we've got to have the negative of the LED coming and the 0 volt power supply. Now let's join the UV LED to its resistor. Let's take that, push it in the same hole, and then it must go to, is it pin number 5? I don't know what it is, but there it is. If we could solder that, that'd be great. Quite a hard little one. I think that I might have actually soldered that to that pin. Let's snip the rest off. Then the only thing left is we need to attach our battery box. We want to get it down as flat as possible. So that is now soldered on, and I think our final goes to the actual negative terminal of the battery. Look at that. So this looks a lot more compact. I'm going to get a piece of plastic just to cover this with. I'm getting a piece of plastic from a used milk bottle just to perhaps cover the remote with. Remember, we're inching our way to perfection here. Here is our finished little remote. It started out like that, big and cumbersome. Now it's small, and it switches the bank of LEDs on and off. It only works on 2 batteries instead of 4. Fits all onto a tiny little bit of Vero board. There's the infrared LED, there's the little switch. So pretty pleased and chuffed that we managed to consolidate everything into that tiny little remote. I must say I really do enjoy little projects like this infrared remote project. We started with something big and ugly and prototype, and now we've started to streamline it, and I don't think we've finished here. This is not the final product. This is just a lot better than our original one, which looked like this. So I think it's important in every day to have something that you just enjoy doing. And I know that I will look back at the end of today and just feel better about myself having, taken the effort to make a slightly better version of our original remote. And I performed a bit of an experiment in the mind recently. Last Saturday, I said to myself, I want to, during the day, analyze what I'm thinking about at the time. And I think one could write it down. So I would catch myself thinking about this, and then I'd ask myself, what do I want to think about that? And then if I didn't want to, I'd change the subject. Be like having a remote, just changing it. But this is the first time I've really tried that, because I thought to myself, how can you check what you're thinking about? Because doesn't that change what you're thinking about? And it's actually not so. It's like you just, every 10 minutes or so, you're starting to train yourself to ask the question, okay, what have I been thinking about for the last 10 minutes? And so then you think to yourself, was that thing that I was thinking about making me happy or not? And maybe it's designing a remote, and then you find, okay, fine, that's a great topic. But then you could find like certain things are just making you upset, annoyed, or whatever. You could be listening to the news and you might say, oh, that's so annoying, or there's something on TV, some program that's frightening you or distressing you or whatever. So I thought it was just so interesting to think about what you're thinking about. And you can do it. And I actually really want to make a habit of analyzing every 10 minutes. And this is something, it's almost like when you dream. If you don't make the habit of, when you wake up thinking about what did I dream about, you forget it immediately. But if you get into a habit of asking yourself, oh, what did I dream about? And then maybe you write it down. Well, it's the same thing. Throughout the day, you could ask, after every 10 minutes, you just interrupt whatever you've been thinking about, and you say, okay, what was I thinking about there? And then you could write it down. Be an interesting thing to diarize. And then ask yourself, do I really want to think about this? And a scripture, my favorite scripture at the moment is 2 Corinthians 10 verse 5, which says, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, and taking into captive every thought to the obedience of Christ. And I mean, Christ's mind, the way he controlled his mind, he had perfect mind control. His mind, he was never just daydreaming or allowing his mind to wander, to do whatever it wanted to do or to think whatever it wanted to think. His was a mind under strict control, taking it into captivity. And through him, we can take every thought captive. So, and you know what? It just makes you so much happier if you say to yourself, I've been sitting here worrying about what's going to happen tomorrow. Why am I worried? And I'm pretty sure I know exactly what I'm going to do tomorrow. I've got a function on. I've got this and that sorted out. There's nothing more I can think about, nothing more that I can do. Forget about it. I refuse to think about this any further. Or like you thinking, someone's done me wrong. I think they're going to do me wrong. Then I started saying to myself, no, I'll wait until they do me wrong. If they ever do me wrong, and they don't, generally 99.9% of the time they don't do you wrong, and you've sat there worrying about someone who you suspect is going to do you wrong and they don't do you wrong. So what a waste of negativity in a negative afternoon or whatever, just worrying about, this negative thing's going to happen, but it doesn't. Rather wait for it to happen. So I refuse to think about it. So this is what I've been working on. And I know that when I was a teen, I used to be worried about almost everything. And I read that book by Dale Carnegie, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. It's got principles of how you can channel your mind to ask yourself questions like, what's the worst that can happen? And the worst that can happen is normally not too bad. The worst that could happen, let's say, if you organizing a dinner and it's a flop is people think, oh, you're not the greatest cook, but they appreciate that you invited them for dinner. Let's say something like that. So the worst that can happen is never that bad. And quite often you could ask, what's the worst that happens? I die and then I get to be with Christ. So the worst that could happen is not that bad. It'd be great. Not that I want to get there to any sooner than I have to, but you know, these are just mental tricks. So having a little electronics project. I know this is very similar to the previous two that I've done, but you know, everything evolves. Like the way I'm making these things is evolving, and probably the next thing I would do is to make a proper printed electronic board where you dissolve the copper from the actual is it the PC board or whatever they call it, and get a proper circuit, solder the things, have it all properly worked out. It would be actually amazing to make one. And you can actually make them fairly simply with a permanent marker. And yeah, a permanent marker, you can just draw the tracks onto that board and then you etch it away with a certain compound. I forget its name, but I've got some of it in a bottle, very old, but I've got some. And then you can make your own circuit board that was like this one. So I'm kind of enjoying the process of getting to the completed, much nicer product. But I still like this Vero board stuff. It's going to be hard to beat this. It's full of holes. It's just lovely stuff to work with, and to put your components through the holes and then to solder them, and it doesn't melt. So your soldering iron works great. It's going to be really, I think, hard to beat this kind of board. In fact, I want to get more of it, and you can just cut pieces off it. That's what I did with a saw. But otherwise, the thing is you have to etch your own boards, and then you have to drill the holes, which is a pain in itself. So, yeah, for something as simple as this remote, this was quite a nice project. I hope you enjoyed just seeing the way I'm fiddling around. I don't think you're meant to make electronic projects like this, but I quite like the way it turned out.